Are we okay to carry on, Cara?
Yeah, you're okay to resume, Chairman.
I've only got you on my screen at the moment, but I'll carry on doing the roll call. Councillor Gary Clarkson, are you present?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Cliff Entwistle, are you present?
Present, David.
Thank you. Councillor Gillian Freeman, are you present?
I'm present.
Thank you, Jill. We've got apologies from Paul Nichols. Councillor John Ogle, are you present? I don't think we've got anything from John. Councillor Lynn Schuler, are you present?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ben Softlet, are you present?
Present, Chair.
Thank you. And obviously, Carolyn as Vice Chair is present. We also today have a number of officers today in attendance. So I'll do an introduction by doing a roll call for those. David Hill, are you present?
Yes, I'm present, Chair.
Thank you. Linda Turner, are you present?
Yes, I'm present, Chair.
Thank you. Amjad Ali, are you present? Hello,
Sorry,
Amjad.
Chair. Yes, I'm present, Chair.
Thank you. John Presley, are you present?
I am indeed.
Thank you. Chris William, are you present?
I am indeed.
Thank you. Cara Hopkinson, are you present? Are you present, Cara? And obviously, Ellen Hinsley, are you present?
Present, Chair.
I think we've lost Cara, but I know she's here because it's saying that she's here on my screen. Agenda item number 1. Oh, sorry, no, I've messed up here. In a number of, if a number of members lose connection and the meeting becomes inquorate or the live streaming for public viewing fails, I shall adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to allow connections to be re-established. There is a confidential item on this afternoon's agenda, which when we reach that point of the meeting, the live stream will be ended. At this point, members should ensure that they are alone to comply with the code of conduct. Given this virtual meeting, there is no corporate responsibility to do a detailed fire procedure as we ordinarily would in a normal meeting. However, I would like to highlight that this committee is being live streamed on social media, and so all participants, please be aware of your actions and take appropriate safety precautions from your place of live streaming. Can I please remind members to switch off their microphones when not speaking? Thank you. Agenda item number 1 is apologies. Are there any apologies?
Yes, Chair, there are apologies from Councillor Nichols. Can I just ask as well, I think Cara's lost connection, so can we pause a moment, please?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 2 is to receive declarations of interest by members and officers. Are there any declarations of interest by members? Are there any declarations of interest from officers? Right.
No declarations received, sorry, Chair.
Right, thank you. Agenda item number 3 is the minutes held of the 11th of February 2020, pages 5 to 10 on your agenda. I will move around in alphabetical order. If you are in favour, against or abstaining that they represent an accurate record, please answer clearly when your name is called. Councillor Dave Challoner, I'm in favour. Councillor Carolyn Troop.
I'm in favour, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Clarkson.
Yes, I'm in favour, Chair.
Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
In favour, David.
Councillor Jill Freeman.
I'm in favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lynn Schuler.
In favour, Chair.
And Councillor Ben Soffler.
I'm in favour, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Obviously, I cannot sign those minutes, but if I have to go into the office and sign them or anytime, I can do that. Agenda item number 4 is the minutes for action and implementation on pages 11 to 12 of your agenda. I can inform you that these have all been addressed. Agenda item number 5 is the outstanding minutes list, page 13 of your agenda. There are no outstanding minutes. Agenda item number 6 is key decision number 815. The financial outturn 2019/20 has been withdrawn from this agenda and will be presented to the next meeting on the 11th of June. As chairman of this committee, I did speak with Dave Hill and this has been agreed. So that item has been withdrawn from the agenda this afternoon and will be presented later. Agenda item 7A is corporate risk management, quarter 4, pages 15 to 24 on your agenda, and the officer to present the report is Mr. David Hill, and I would hand over to David now to deliver that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report that members will be familiar with, as it's a quarterly report, so you've had 3 quarters of this report this year already, and it's to update members on the corporate risk register and on any risks that have materially changed during the quarter. With it being quarter 4, this is the risks up to 31st of March. I won't go through each of the risks, but I will pick out a couple that I'll need to speak about that have changed partly because of the pandemic. The first one is on page 16, and this is a risk that's changed. It was an amber risk and it's now a red risk. And this is welfare reforms that create significant negative community impact. The COVID-19 implications are not yet fully known, but we have had significant changes to the amount of people claiming benefits. As people are changing incomes, they're migrating over to UC. On the council tax reduction scheme, which is our major benefit that we're administering now, we went from the 1st of April onto an income banded model. So as people are not working now, they are falling into the council tax reduction scheme. We have had about double the amount of applications we normally have, and if you remember, we've got a money advice team, and they're handling about 3 times as many calls and meetings as they used to do. That's about 300 a month that they're handling now. It is creating some problems for us, and we are working through them. We're enlisting the help of other bodies to make sure that we don't slip behind on processing. But it does mean that we're going to have that risk has increased, that it's going to be a negative impact. The second risk I want to talk about is on page 18. On page 18, it's the long-term financial integrity of the council, and you won't be surprised that this is creating a problem for the moment. We already had a significant amount of uncertainty surrounding financial integrity, and it would have changed to red had it not already been red, but because it's already red, the risk hasn't changed. But it is still a significant worry to us. We did have, in the medium-term financial plan, £1.2 million worth of savings to be made within the next 4 years. That has increased now because of the outbreak. We're estimating a loss of income of about 2.1 million, which is through various things. It's a lot. There's less collected in council tax, less collected in business rates. The impact on fees and charges, we're losing about £14,000 to £15,000 a week on car parking charges, and there are other fees and charges that we're not collecting as well. The 2.1 million loss is covered partly by a government grant. We've received 1.2 million in government grant, but that still leaves a 0.9 million shortfall in 2021. We had been building up some reserves in order that we could cover the uncertainty when the fair funding review and the 75% business rate retention came in, and that was scheduled for April next year. That has now been pushed back, and we haven't got a date for that. But we're carefully monitoring the loss of income and the extra costs as well. We're at the moment, it's very rough estimates, if you like, because we're only basing the loss of income on 1 month's figures. As we get to the end of May and we've got another month's collection figures, particularly for council tax and business rates, we'll be able to update those estimated losses. We are doing a government return every month to update government, and I will keep the committee informed on that. I won't go through any other risks, but I'm happy to answer any questions on the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. I've just got a couple of questions, but what I'll do is I'll ask you a question first, and then I'll go through all councillors if they've got any questions that they'd like to ask. And then, like I said, because I've got a couple. The first one obviously relates to the last page that you spoke about on page 18. Obviously, the council, we turned round, and when the outbreak of COVID-19 and everything else that has happened with it, we as a council straight away offered to freeze council tax to the constituents and people that pay council tax. Was there a big uptake on that, David?
I don't think so. We have suspended recovery and suspended reminders of council tax. But we haven't taken any further measures on council tax. As I say, we've only got 1 month's council tax in for April, one month's records, and we know it's about 0.5% down on what we normally collect this year. Which, if we extrapolate that to the whole year, then it's about £250,000 loss.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So the council, obviously, when we're in a position to see if there has been an uptake or if people have frozen it by contacting us, we obviously will be contacting people to just remind them that the council tax is now due. That'll be happening, will it?
Yes, we'll unsuspend shortly as we come out of lockdown and people get back to it. We'll start doing the recovery again. Right.
Thank you, David. Right. I'm going to go around councillors and ask if they've got any questions on David's report. So I'll go to Vice Chair Carolyn Troop first. Have you got anything you'd like to ask, Carolyn?
Yes, Chairman. David, you talked about loss of income from fees and charges. Obviously, that relates to car parking as one of the aspects of loss of income. Are we able to help with shops reopening so that we get people into the shops and parking their cars up to retain some income?
I think what you're asking is how we reopen the high street, isn't it?
Yes, David, I am. Yes.
Yeah, we have got a government grant that came through earlier this week of 100,000 to help towards that, and that mainly covers. Although we're waiting for the full guidance on that, which can often change things, but it's intended for the signage, for communications, help with queuing outside of shops and that sort of thing. I'm not heading that particular project, but as we develop it, as we get the guidance, there'll be more communications on how we're using that money.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Clarkson, have you got a question?
If you can just unmute your mic, please, Councillor Clarkson.
I'll come back to him, Cara. Councillor Cliff Entwistle, have you got any questions on David's report?
I have no questions, David, for David, but just to say, well done, David, for keeping the ship rolling. You've got my sympathy with how much work you and your team have got on at the moment.
Right, thank you for that, Cliff. Gillian, have you got any questions that you'd like to ask?
No, just to emphasise what Cliff said, doing it faster, and I don't envy him one.
Right, thanks for that,
Did
Jill.
you hear me?
Yeah. Gary, you're back with us now. Have you got any questions that you'd like to ask on this report?
Yeah.
Right, go ahead then, please.
I've not got any questions at this point on that part of the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Councillor Lynn Schuler, have you got anything that any questions that you'd like to ask on this section of the report?
Yes, please. If we could just look at page 17, it talks about the appointment of a data protection officer.
Can I ask, where are we with that, and do we have any time frames?
I think David should be. Can you answer that, please, David?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I was just finding the
Yeah.
page. The data protection officer has now been appointed, as I understand. I think can't remember his name now, but I'm pretty sure he's in post now.
Right, that's lovely then. So that moves that one on. Just a quick question about pages 19 and 20. Both refer to training courses, etc. Are we going to have an action plan and some time frames set against those, please?
I think on the safety and resilience, that the health and safety training course was scheduled for, I think it was the day 26th of March, and we had to cancel that one. So there is something in place for that. And the page 20, that's the failure to properly risk assess our tangible assets. Is that the one you're talking about, Mr. Schuler?
Sorry, it talks about Gleeds are currently working to collate the council's assets. Do we know when that will be started or completed?
Yes, Gleeds unfortunately furloughed the staff earlier. I think it was from the 1st of May they furloughed the staff. So the particular consultant we were working with wasn't working. I have got in touch with them. They expected it just to be for a month, but I have got in touch with them again yesterday, as it happens, to pick that up again. There is a timetable, but I think it will be pushed back now in the light of what's the 4-week delay. We expected sometime in the autumn to have a proposal coming forward. Gleeds have already done the first stage of work, and we've signed up for the second phase. First phase was a lot of fact finding about where the assets were, what sort of records were kept for the assets. And the second phase is then to produce a solution for us so that we can keep those assets or records of those assets in a single place so we can access them. They have suggested 2 major changes. One is that we use an estate environment, as they call it, which records all our assets and all the details of assets, but a separate facilities management environment, which will keep all the details on the compliance, fire risk assessments and so on, of all our facilities, and one will feed the other. So that's the proposal, but now they've got to work to how we get those processes in place and how we get all that information complete to feed into those systems.
Thank you. That shows that we've got a plan in place, even in these difficult in the difficult situation that we're in. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Councillor Ben Softly, have you got any questions that you would like to ask on this section?
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. I've just got a couple more, David. The first one is obviously on page 22. Which is obviously to do around GDPR, and it's obviously because we've got a lot of staff that are working from home now. Have all these members of staff completed the mandatory online GDPR course? Because I think that's important if they are working from home. I know if they were actually in an office, we can cover it while they're at work kind of thing, but if they're working from home, I think this is an important part to do with GDPR.
Yeah, I can't hand on heart say that 100% have completed the GDPR course, but I certainly would hope so. It was a mandatory requirement, so hopefully they've all completed it. There are pockets in different areas where we've had to put extra measures in place for security. As you can imagine, the housing benefits people working from home, they're using quite or handling quite sensitive data. And we've had to satisfy the DWP that we have enough security in place to make sure that that ticks all the boxes as far as GDPR is concerned, and we've done that.
Right, thank you. And just another question from me is obviously on page 23. It's the report that's been done by Savills about our housing stock and things like that. Could this, when this report's been done, would it be possible if it could be sent out, obviously via email, to all ward councillors, because some ward councillors have got large amounts of housing stock in their wards, and it'd just be nice for them to actually know what's happened, i.e. because it's covering things, you know, like the fire management and things like that. And there are actual councillors who are involved with tenants and residents associations. So I think this kind of information would be important. I've seen you indicate, Lynn, so I'll bring you in soon.
Yes, Chair, I'll talk to the head of housing about that.
Right, thank you. I'll just go through the list again alphabetically. If anybody's got any more relevant questions that they've had a chance to maybe look at this report. Councillor Caroline Troop.
No more questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Clarkson.
No questions, thanks, Chair. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
No questions, David.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Freeman.
Councillor Freeman, can you just unmute your microphone, please? Chairman, can you also point out that Councillor Ogle is now in the meeting?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. And obviously, Councillor Lynn Schuler, you did indicate that you wanted to speak, so if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, just in terms of the report on page 23, I'm wondering if the lockdown and shielding has impacted upon this, because I have had a couple of residents that have actually had to decline their safety checks of their housing, and does that put our risk of assurance at a further risk?
I can't answer that question. I can find out from the head of housing and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. I do know that the head of housing was aware of it because I have spoken to her previously, so I'm sure that any checks that were had to be delayed will be of an extreme priority moving forward. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all councillors for their questions and input on this section.
Hello, David.
Hello. Sorry, John.
Yes, good idea just to ask me. I think most of the relevant questions have been answered, so that's good. So I'm comfortable with that. Just to let you know, I was in the meeting when you did your roll call. But we'll move on as you wish now.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, and obviously we have had a few technical glitches first off, but I'm glad that you can join the meeting and you can be part of it. Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you, David.
Chair, can I just confirm something that was asked earlier, that the data protection officer is Steve Wormold?
Right. Okay. I would like now to move to the recommendation on page 24, and I will go through members and ask them if they are in favour, against or abstain. Please could you answer clearly on this when your name is called. Councillor Dave Challoner, I'm in favour. Councillor Caroline Troop.
I'm in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Clarkson.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
In favour, David.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Freeman.
I'm in favour.
Councillor John Ogle.
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Inshuler.
In favour, Chair.
Councillor Ben Soffler.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you. That is carried through unanimous. We now go on to agenda item 7B, which is internal audit progress report. Reports for 2019 to 20, pages 25 to 76 of your agenda. And the officer presenting this report is Amjad Ali. So if Amjad, you would like to present your report, please, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just for the benefit of those that are watching this live stream, so my name is Amjad Ali. I work for RSM, and we provide the internal audit service for Bassett Law District Council in line with the audit plan that was approved last year. So agenda item number 7B, Chair, on page 25, you'll see in section 2.1 a list of 6 reports that we have finalised since the last Audit and Risk Scrutiny Committee meeting, and they're all listed there, and I will go into a bit more detail with regards to those shortly on our main report. Across these 6 reports, Chair, we've raised 38 management actions which have been agreed with the relevant management teams across the council departments. Of those, 17 have been classified as medium risk priority, and 21 of those have been classified as low risk priority. Pleasing to say, Chair, that there are no actions that we raised which would be deemed to be of a high risk. Turning to page 29 of our actual report, Chair, you'll see a chart there showing 100%. And what we're basically saying here is that all the audit work that was agreed as part of the internal audit plan for 2019-20, all the audit work has been now fully completed. And these were the 6 remaining reports that we're bringing to this committee today. On page 30, Chair, section 2 of our report, you'll see the list of the 6 reports that we're presenting today. 2 of those are safeguarding and section 106 agreements. These have both been deemed to be substantial assurance, so the council can take substantial assurance from the work that we've done across these 2 reports. That is the highest level of assurance opinion that we give, so that's a positive result, Chair. Asset management and responsive repairs, we've given those as reasonable assurance. Again, Chair, that is still a positive opinion across those 2. Across all the reports, we have raised a number, as I mentioned, of medium and low priority actions which have been agreed with the management team. We've also undertaken a continuous assurance visit. This is where we look at 10 key controls across the department, and we've done visits in the past. And again, a pleasing result. We've only raised 2 low priority actions on this. The other audit, Chair, that we've taken is the 4th follow-up visit. This is where we follow up previously agreed management actions, and we've noted that little progress has been made to implement the actions that we reviewed as part of this report, and I'll talk about that shortly. In section 2.1, Chair, you'll see some of the high-level information with regards to the management actions that we've agreed as part of our audit work, and you'll see the ticks showing there, which, as I mentioned previously, are positive reports. Nevertheless, there are some actions that need to be implemented by the management teams. Turning over the page, Chair, on page 32, again, you'll see the continuous assurance and the responsive repair shown as positive. Just to really focus on the follow-up work, we undertook our 4th follow-up review. We followed up 29 actions from previous reports, and we noted that 4 of those have been fully implemented by the management teams. There were 10 actions which were ongoing, so some work has already started to implement those, but they're not being fully implemented. 8 of those actions that we reviewed had not been implemented, and 7 had been superseded. New systems and processes have been brought in, so those actions are no longer applicable. So that's the results of our follow-up work that's coming out of that. So more work needs to be done in that area. And over the last few months, we have been working quite closely with the council in this area. And I know the council's been doing quite a lot of work around updating Pentana, assigning actions to individuals to sort of chase on our behalf as well. And all those actions that we have raised across all those reports I've just mentioned, we will continue to follow those up until they're implemented, and we will continue to bring those reports to the committee meetings. On page 33, Chair, changes to the audit plan. There have not been any further changes to the audit plan, and as I mentioned, all the work has now been fully completed. Appendix A, Chair, from page 35 through to 37 lists all the audit work that we've previously presented to this committee, and from pages 39 to 76, Chair, are details of the executive summaries and action plans for the 6 reports that I've just mentioned. Those reports also highlight the positives that have come out from our audit work, as well as the action plans for where we've raised any findings and agreed management actions with the relevant departments. So that basically covers the progress report, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Chairman, sorry, can I just say, can people make sure that everybody, that you're not sharing your screen? Someone is currently sharing their screen. Thank you.
Can I just ask how we identify that, please?
Yeah, on my control panel next to the microphone symbol, I've got, it's like a square with an arrow in that says share, and if you are sharing, it will have a cross in it.
Mine has a cross in it. However, I can't manipulate it. It won't do anything. So
I think that's the one that's being shared.
Is it?
I think it's Councillor Ogle. Isn't that a picture of him at the top on the bar?
Oh,
Councillor
right.
Ogle, can you just unshare your screen, please?
And how do we do that?
On your control panel, on the share button, you just need to click it again, and it should take it off.
Which is the share button?
It's the square, and yours will currently have a cross through it.
Stop sharing. How's that?
Thank you.
That's
great.
it, John. Right. I'll go through alphabetical order again. If anybody has got any questions that they need to ask or on Amjad's report. Firstly, I've got no questions. I'll go to Vice Chairman Councillor Carolyn Troop. Have you got any questions, Carolyn?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Clarkson, have you got any questions on this area of the report?
No, it seems very clear. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
No problems, David. It's a pleasing, positive report, and well done to the team.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Freeman.
No problems.
Councillor John Ogle, have you got any questions on this section of the report?
David, I'd just like to know on IT operational resilience, it's only partial assured. What are the issues that's preventing that from getting higher assurance?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, Councillor's made reference to Appendix A, and that was the report that has already been previously presented to this committee.
Yeah.
So I don't have the details, but the previous papers should have all the details with regards to the actions that have been raised with regards to that.
If we haven't got a if we haven't got a paper from previous, so we're a little bit stuck on that, David.
I mean, what we could do is we can, I mean, the report has been issued to the management team, and as I mentioned, it's been presented at the previous meetings, but more than happy to reissue that report through David Hill if that's what the committee would like. But from my understanding is when the work was done, an action plan was agreed with the management team, and all the findings will have an implementation date against those. So from our perspective now, it's really up to the management team within the council to implement those actions. But from our perspective, we just started the audit work now for this year, and as part of that is the follow-up work. So what we will be doing is we will be following up those actions across all of those reports listed in Appendix A, as well as the IT review, and we'll be reporting that back to this committee. But in the meantime, if members would like another copy of that report, then that can be made available. But it has already been presented at previous meetings.
I understand what you're saying. It's past you now. It's back with David Hill because you've flagged it up. So I understand that. So if David could send me, certainly me, a copy of that report, because obviously I've missed it in the past, and I am interested in exactly what those problems are, and I'll be happy with that. If anybody else would like those papers, they're very welcome to have them as well, Chair. It's up to you.
If that's the obviously what you flagged up, Councillor Ogle, what we'll do is the relevant papers that are required could be sent out by obviously David Hill to people, to all the committee, as through an email system, so through the email system, so that everybody is fully aware of what you've raised. And then if they are fully aware of the report that's gone through previously.
Thank you, David.
Councillor Lynn Schuler, have you got any questions?
Councillor Schuler, can you just unmute your microphone, please?
I thought I had. Apologies. Thank you, Amjad, for your report. I'm just looking at safeguarding on page 31, and it outlines that it will be made compulsory to all staff working within regulated roles. And I do note in your executive summary in page 39 that it discusses the working with the local Safeguarding Children's Board. Would we not in Bassetlaw Council think that all staff should have some form of compulsory safeguarding training?
I think you're right. I think there is some training that can be provided to all staff because most of the roles will have some interaction.
They'll all have interaction with the public.
Exactly. But for the purpose of that specific finding, management have agreed of actually implementing that specific training.
Okay, thank you. And then can I just look at page 44? It talks about controls not always consistently applied. Do we know why and how we're going to address this?
I mean, in terms of the controls, the details are listed on the page for that specific report, as you mentioned, on page 47 onwards. So if you look at, let's say, take page 47, you'll notice there's a control. We've got the findings, and it details in those findings what has not been done or what has not been done to the standard required, and hence the management action. But as I mentioned previously, Chair, if you for each of those individual reports, if you look at the key findings in each of those reports on sections 1.3 for those, you will notice that we've also highlighted some of the positives of where controls are working and working effectively, and where they're not working effectively, that's where we provide the details in the detailed findings section. So for the example you've just given on page 47.
Yeah. And just page 32, it notes that completion of inspection reports are not carried out. Is this a policies and procedures, and therefore would it just be dealt with via a training issue?
Sorry, if you could just
page 32.
Which report were you referring to there?
Oh yeah, sorry. It's responsive repairs. The last bullet point says post-completion inspections are not always carried out and evidenced. I'm assuming that many times they're carried out, but we don't always have the evidence of this. And therefore, is that just is it in the policies and procedures that we should evidence it? And also, is it a training issue to ensure that people are evidencing that these have been carried out?
What we've done, we've sample tested, so there's going to be instances where they've probably not been done and they should have been done, and there will be instances where the evidence is not there for us as internal auditors to confirm whether they've been done or not. So it's going to be a bit of both, but also there might be other factors behind what reason why they're not being done. It might be staffing issues, etc. But the expectation is that the post inspections are done, but there, like I said, there are instances where we found there was no evidence of that.
Yeah, and that's the thing that gives us the assurance, isn't it? So yeah, okay then, thank you.
Right, thank you, Lynn. Just one thing I'd like to, it's more a comment than anything else, Amjad. On page 72 of your report, it talks about town hall management, and one of the big things, obviously, like we spoke about, what David Hill spoke about, is the finances, what's actually at the council. I mean, with Bassett Law being unique in having two town halls, obviously Worksop and Retford, that does bring in quite a lot of financial funding to the council. And obviously with the COVID-19, what's happened, there's the council has had to cancel a lot of events. And so I know Karen Kelk, who I've worked with because I help with our brass band, we've moved our booking now for the third time through the COVID-19 to next year. So I do know that they are looking to try and help people who have booked the town halls, maybe with new dates or whatever, but obviously some people have had weddings and things like that. And I do understand that fees have been obviously reimbursed to people, but it's just basically just a comment to let you know that the town hall management are on top of that side of things with how the COVID-19 has affected bookings for one of our facilities.
Yeah, and you'll see from the example you've given, Chair, that Karen has actually agreed for the finding we made there. Karen has actually agreed an action plan, and there's an implementation date with regards to that in place.
All right, thank you. I'll go round councillors once more if they have got any more questions on Amjad's report. Councillor Carolyn Troop.
No questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Gary Clarkson.
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Freeman.
No questions.
Thank you. Councillor John Ogle.
No more questions, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lynn Schuler.
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ben Soffler.
No questions, Chair, and thank you, Amjad.
Thank you. Right. What I would like to do now is I would like to move to the recommendation on page 26, and if members could respond in favour, against, or if they wish to abstain the vote. Councillor David Challoner, I'm in favour. Councillor Carolyn Troop.
In favour, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Clarkson.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor John Ogle.
In favour, David.
Thank you. Councillor Lynn Schuler.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ben Soffler.
In favour, Chair.
Right, thank you for that report.
What
Amjad.
about mine?
Oh, sorry, Jill Freeman. Missed you.
Yes, I'm in favour.
Thank you, Jill. Sorry about that, love. Thank you, Amjad, for that report. We now move on to agenda item 7C, the Internal Audit Annual Report 2019 to 2020, page 77 to 94. And the officer giving the report is Chris William. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. So as my colleague has previously said, my name is Chris Williams, and I'm the engagement partner from RSM, who provide the internal audit service to Basset Law District Council. So what you have in front of you on this agenda item is our annual internal audit report, which is probably the most important document that we present to the council during the course of the year, as it draws together all of the assurances that we've provided and discussed at the various committee meetings during the course of the year. So the substantive report starts on page 81 of the pack, and the key paragraph for the councillor's attention is the head of internal audit opinion, which is in section 1.1 on page 83 of the pack, where we have concluded in respect of 2019-20 that the council has an effective and adequate framework for internal control, risk management and governance. Our work has identified some further enhancements which we've talked about during the course of the year at this committee and on the previous agenda item. And it's important that the council implement the actions that have been agreed to make sure that that framework does remain adequate and effective. Overall, we conclude that that is a positive opinion. So that's a good place for the council to be in. There's quite an important caveat at the bottom of section 1.2, which is the last bullet point, which just references the fact that our internal audit work for 1920 was largely completed prior to the advent of the pandemic, and obviously the operational difficulties that that's caused at the council. So the audit work and the opinion for 1920 doesn't technically reflect the situation that arose in the final few weeks of the year, but clearly we recognise that there has been a significant impact on the operations of the council and indeed its risk profile. Section 1.3 sets out the basis of our opinions in respect of corporate governance, risk management and internal control, and those are based on the internal audit reports that you've discussed during the course of the year. Amjad referenced the progress that's been made to implement previously agreed internal audit actions, and in the next section, in section 2, we have summarised the progress through the year. And I think obviously this committee during the course of the last year has already talked about the progress that's been made against the delivery of those actions, and we would very much encourage the council to take that to look at the implementation of the Pentana system to improve the basis of that progress. We do conclude that that's a very important barometer for the internal audit service. So I think that's something that the council and its management team will be looking to improve on during the course of 2021. The remainder of the report, Appendix A on page 88, sets out the range of opinions that I can provide as head of internal audit, and as you can see from my previous comment, the council sits at the second rating there, which is above the line. It's a positive opinion and a good result overall. And then the remainder of the report, Appendix B, simply summarises all of the internal audit assignments that have been reported to the council during the course of the year. So I've nothing further to add on that report, Chairman, but I'll happily take any questions.
Right, thank you for that report, Chris. I will now go around councillors again and ask them if they've got any questions on your report. Thank you very much for your in-depth vision and everything on that report. Obviously, I've got no questions. I'll go to Councillor Carolyn Troop. Have you got any questions for Chris?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Clarkson, have you got any questions for Chris on his report?
Just a very quick one, Chair. On IT operational resilience, on page 90, bottom of the page, was that connected with the difficulties that we had in the IT system over a number of months, and therefore it's been worked on, but hasn't, in terms of the summary, hasn't achieved a positive yet? Does that make sense?
It does, Councillor. I'm afraid, as my colleague Amjad referenced in the last agenda item, I don't actually have the detail of the IT operational resilience report in front of me, but clearly it did come out as a partial opinion, which was technically below the line and a negative opinion. You can see in the columns to the right of the page there that we did make 8 recommendations which were agreed by the management team, and we clearly will follow those recommendations up during the course of 2021 and report back to the committee. But if all of those recommendations have been agreed and implemented as per the original internal audit report, then that will push that rating up into a positive rating. But I haven't got the precise detail to confirm that at this stage.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's in a sense we can see that it is. In reality, is probably more positive than it looks on paper, with all the changes that we've had in IT over the last few months.
That could very well be the case, Chairman. This is obviously an internal audit report is undertaken and delivered to the council, and that is effectively a snapshot at that point in time. The culmination of each internal audit assignment is an action plan that's agreed with the council's management team, and that action plan is there simply to improve the level of control. So if those recommendations and actions are taken forward as agreed, then you should see that level of control and assurance increasing.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity.
Right, okay, thank you, Gary. Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
No questions, David, but again, another positive report.
Thank you, Cliff. Councillor Jill Freeman.
No questions. Thank you.
Cheers. Councillor John Ogle.
No further questions, Chairman.
Councillor Lynn Schuler.
No questions, thank you.
And Councillor Ben Soffit.
No questions, thank you, Chair.
I don't think anybody else has got any question. I think they've all asked you certain questions on that report, Chris. So thank you very much for that report. And I will now go and ask members of the committee if the recommendation is set out on page 79. If members could please respond if they are in favour, against, or if they wish to abstain the vote. Councillor David Challoner, I'm in favour. Councillor Carolyn Troop.
In favour, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Clarkson.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
In favour, David.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Freeman.
For.
Thank you. Councillor John Ogle.
In favour.
Thank you.
For. Did you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Councillor Lynn Schuler.
In favour, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Ben Sofflet.
I'm in favour, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to the next agenda item, which is 7D, which is the draft annual government statement and report for 2019 to 2020, pages 95 to 116 on your agenda. And the officer to deliver this report is Linda Turner. Over to you, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents the draft annual governance statement for the year ending 31st of March 2020. All local authorities are required to prepare an annual governance statement to report on how they have complied with their own local code of governance during the year. Just to remind you, the Council's local code of corporate governance for 2019-20 was approved by Council on the 27th of June 2019, and this set out the framework for the governance at the Council. So the actual governance statement provides an assurance statements from the Council's internal and external auditors, as Chris Williams has just mentioned. So the internal audit opinion gets included within the annual governance statement. Also included are a summary of the key activities undertaken during the year, which demonstrates how the Council has complied with its own local governance framework. There's an update on the actions that have been taken during the year to identify it. Sorry, excuse me. There's an update provided on the actions taken on the key issues identified in the 18-19 annual governance statement. And also during 2019-20, a number of new issues have been identified via risk management, internal audits, and other internal control processes. And these are summarised on pages 113 and 114, along with the action plans to address them. One key point to note really is in relation to the challenges from coronavirus. So the annual governance statement assesses governance in place during 2019 and 20. So the majority of the year was unaffected by the coronavirus. However, it has impacted on the governance of the Council during March 2020. The full impact and the implications are currently unknown, but the Council is mindful of the serious consequences this will have on the delivery of the 2021 budget due to cost pressures, income losses, and the inability to deliver savings plans. The Council has acted with speed and resourcefulness to COVID-19, and a number of changes and measures have been implemented to support vulnerable people and businesses. A delegated decision has been signed to enable the Council to react promptly and effectively to the implications of COVID-19. This has included a number of amendments to ensure service delivery in the short term, and these are detailed in the AGS. The recovery phase will address the medium and long-term impacts, and a review of the lessons learned will take place once the crisis is over. The main details on the 113 and 114, the issues identified and the action plans for future years. And there's also the details of the delegated decision that's been signed to enable the COVID-19 measures to be put in place. Any questions?
Right, thanks for that report, Linda. I will go around members again, asking them if they've got any questions on your report or any observations. Obviously, my first observation is it's on 113, which is the page which has got about the Council's constitution. Everything was going really well with the meetings and everything that we was discussing with the Council's constitution. And then obviously because of COVID-19, everything seems to have come to an abrupt halt. This will be obviously addressed as and when we can get back either in around a table in a meeting room with adequate social distancing, or even if we have to do meetings with the people on the subgroup by virtual meeting, because it is important that this does get ironed out and sorted before the end of, obviously it's not going to be the end of this municipal year, but it'll go into 2020-21 like is stated on the agenda in the paperwork. And I feel that obviously it is an important thing that we do have to get sorted out, and it will be obviously as things start and progress and these lockdown situations and things like that, and advice from the government about social distancing comes back. So hopefully we can get the full running of the council back up and running as soon as possible and in a most sensible way. But that's just my comment on that, Linda, because that was going really well. The people on the subgroup we were all working tremendously together, and we were coming up with good suggestions and good ideas. So it's just unfortunate that it's come to an abrupt halt. Carolyn, have you got any questions on this report? Councillor Carolyn Troop.
I'm pleased to see the working group on the tree management is now in place, and also to thank all officers for all the time they spent on getting that into operation, because it's taken a long time and there are quite a lot of risks attached to trees in our district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Carolyn. Councillor Gary Clarkson, have you got any questions on this report?
Not really question, just to support you in the with the review. I think it is really important that we do actually carry on with it at some point as soon as possible. Whether as soon as possible could be in a few months' time, though. But I do think that we do need to do it and complete it so that we can actually bring that new constitution in time for the next AGM.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gary. Thanks for the support.
Chair, I just say something on that.
Yeah.
The constitution review was being driven by the Director of Corporate Resources, and COVID-19, of course, slowed it down. But the prolonged absence of that officer meant that was also a factor in not progressing that as quickly as possible. It's certainly not been stopped in its tracks. It's been paused for the moment. There is a cabinet report going which suggests some interim arrangements for covering that post, and that will be fixed as soon as cabinet approves that and gets post in place for that.
Okay, thank you for that, David. Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
No questions, David, but I thought the report was very clearly put over.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Freeman.
No questions.
Thank you. Councillor John Ogle.
Yes, Chairman, I'm just noticing again, IT operational resilience. There's a mention here to the fraud, and I assume that must have been somebody working in IT, because it's an IT issue rather than the other departments. And I just wondered how much the fraud was.
I think, Chair, I think I'll pick, if I may.
Yeah.
There are only brief details on the fraud because we are still in the open section of the agenda. I'm quite happy to provide further details, but in the confidential section.
Fine, Chairman.
If you want to ask that again later on, you can.
Yeah, I'll do that, Chairman.
Right, thank you. Councillor Lynn Schuler.
No questions, just a comment in regards to the council's constitution. I echo what yourself and Councillor Clarkson have talked about, but I think as soon as the interim appointment is made, I think that we do need to carry on, regardless of whether it needs to be in a virtual meeting as we are today, or really to maintain that impetus and to get that piece of work completed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Councillor Ben Softler.
I'd just echo that, Chair. I'll be more than happy to progress that virtually once we're able to. And just to note that the IT operational resilience here, that the COVID-19 situation has resulted in de facto testing of business continuity, and is obviously the fact we're here today is obviously working at a reasonably decent standard.
Right. Okay, thank you everybody for their questions and comments. We'll now go to the recommendation, which is on page 97. If members could please respond if they are in favour, against, or if they wish to abstain the vote. Councillor David Challoner, I'm in favour. Councillor Caroline Troop.
In favour, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Clarkson.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cliff Entwistle.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gillian Freeman.
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor John Ogle.
In favour.
Thank you. Councillor Lynn Schuler.
In favour, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ben Soffler.
In favour, Chair.
Thank you. That has been carried. I'd like to thank all officers for their reports and giving them over on this first virtual thing. I think it went rather well. Now, after we have now got in section B, which is items for discussion in private, key decisions none. So we now have to go into the confidential item. So I will read out what I have to read, which is, can I please confirm that in accordance with part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and after considering the public interest test as set out by the officer in the body of the report, members agree that the following items of business involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 8, and therefore in accordance with the schedule 100A of the Act, the press public be excluded from this meeting. Could I please ask the caster to stop streaming now to the public, please?